When I found the adoption papers in his drawer, I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the typed words that looked so official, so cruelly casual. My husband's name in bold, my husband's signature at the bottom, and next to it, a name I didn't recognize. The woman he had cheated with. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Outside, our kids were laughing in the backyard, their voices like a memory of the life I thought we had. But in that moment, I realized forgiveness had been a mistake. I remember tracing his name with my finger, as if to make sure it was really him. It was. Before everything shattered, our home was ordinary, noisy, warm, imperfect in the way real families are. Every morning, I'd wake before everyone else. I liked the quiet hour when the world hadn't started moving yet. The smell of coffee, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the faint light sneaking through the curtains. Michael would usually stumble in half awake, rubbing his eyes, already in his work shirt. "Morning, sunshine," he'd say, still half smiling. I'd hand him his coffee, the way I had for 12 years. We weren't perfect. I knew that. We'd had our arguments, mostly about money or time or the usual things marriages stumble over. But I believed we were strong. That belief kept me safe. Our two kids, Sarah and Evan, were the heart of our world. Sarah was 9, all freckles and questions, and Evan 6, still liked to crawl into our bed in the mornings, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. On weekends, we'd go to the park, buy cheap ice cream, and laugh at nothing. I used to think happiness was small and quiet, something you built brick by brick, not something that came in waves. I didn't know, back then, that while I was building, Michael was already planning his escape. It started with distance, the kind you can't measure but can feel. He began staying late at work. Client dinners, he'd say, loosening his tie, avoiding my eyes. I didn't question it much at first. I'd always trusted him. But small things began to stand out. He stopped wearing his wedding ring because it got in the way at work. He started locking his phone, claiming it was for security reasons. And once, when I picked up his jacket from the dry cleaner, there was a faint perfume, not mine, clinging to the collar. I remember sitting on the couch one night, the kids asleep upstairs, and staring at the muted TV. My thoughts kept looping around the same question. Was I imagining this? I tried to be rational. Maybe he really was working hard. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But a woman always knows when something shifts, when love starts to sound like habit. I told myself I wouldn't snoop. But one night, when his phone buzzed at midnight, I reached for it before I could stop myself. A single message flashed on the screen. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. He'll never know." My heart dropped into my stomach. My hands went cold. The next morning, I didn't confront him. I couldn't. I dropped the kids at school, came home, and cried in the kitchen until my coffee turned cold. Then, for reasons I still can't explain, I decided to forgive him before he'd ever confessed. Maybe it was fear. Fear of breaking our family. Fear of what people would say. Or maybe it was love. Twisted and heavy, but love nonetheless. So when I finally asked him, softly, carefully, "Michael, is there someone else?" He froze, then looked down, then whispered, "It was a mistake. I swear it's over." He cried, I cried, and I believed him. I wanted to believe him. We promised to start over. Counseling, honesty, family dinners. I deleted the message thread so I wouldn't be tempted to read it again. For a while, it worked. He came home earlier, smiled more, hugged the kids tighter. We were trying, patching the cracks, pretending the wall wasn't already crumbling. But love built on denial doesn't hold. It just waits to break again. Months passed. Then one afternoon, while cleaning out the drawer of his study, a place I rarely touched, I found a thick brown envelope. Inside were forms, photographs, and letters from an adoption agency. The name of the applicant, Michael Reynolds. Co-applicant, Vanessa Clark. I had never heard of her, but my stomach already knew. There were signatures, dates, even a home suitability interview scheduled. He'd listed a different address, an apartment near his office. I stared at those papers for a long time, trying to make sense of it. He wasn't just still seeing her, he was planning a life with her. And worse, planning to bring a child into it. A child he was ready to raise while pretending ours didn't exist. I could feel my pulse in my ears. I sat on the floor, surrounded by proof of his new future, and realized my forgiveness had been his permission. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake listening to his breathing beside me, calm and steady, as if nothing in the world was wrong. I wanted to shake him, to scream, to throw those papers in his face, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I waited for morning. When the sun came up, I made breakfast, eggs, toast, orange juice, like every other day. The kids giggled at the table, unaware of the storm gathering just a few feet away. Michael came down, kissed Sarah's forehead, and smiled at me. "Big day today," he said, buttering his toast. "For what?" I asked, keeping my voice even. He hesitated. "Work stuff, you know." And I did know. That was the moment I decided this time I wouldn't forgive. I waited until the kids had left for school before I spoke. He was rinsing his plate in the sink, humming under his breath. That same careless tune he always did when he thought everything was fine. "Michael," I said quietly, "what's Vanessa Clark's favorite color?" He froze. The hum died in his throat. He turned around slowly, his eyes already showing the guilt he hadn't yet confessed. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, voice too calm. I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter between us. The brown paper looked so ordinary, so harmless, yet it carried the weight of every lie he told. "You filled out adoption papers," I said, my voice steady but low. "With her name, with your signature. You even listed a home address, just not this one." He blinked, swallowed, then opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. Finally, he whispered, "You went through my things." I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. "That's what you're worried about? That I went through your things?" He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "It's not what it looks like, okay?" "Oh, really?" I said, folding my arms. "Because it looks like you were planning to adopt a child with your mistress, while sleeping under my roof and kissing our kids goodnight." His shoulders tensed. He turned toward me, his face hardening. "Vanessa can't have children. It was complicated. She wanted a family, and I cut him off. And you decided to give her one, while you already had one here." For a long moment, he didn't speak. The ticking clock filled the room. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Those words, "go this far," broke something inside me. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice. Every secret call, every lie, every night he came home smelling faintly of someone else, all of it was a path he chose. I remember staring at him, feeling strangely calm, as if my tears had frozen somewhere deep inside. I said, "I forgave you once. You cried, you promised, and I believed you, but you didn't stop. You just hid it better." He stepped closer, desperate now. "Please let me explain." "No," I said. "You had your chance to explain when I gave you my forgiveness. You used it to build another life." He slumped into the chair, his head in his hands. "I didn't mean to leave you, Emily. I was going to end it." "By adopting a baby with her?" I asked, my voice cracking for the first time. "That's how you end it?" He didn't answer. That day, something shifted in me. I'd spent years being the peacemaker, smoothing over arguments, giving second chances, swallowing pain in the name of family. But now, for the first time, I saw how much that had cost me. I wasn't just forgiving him, I was teaching him how to hurt me. So, I decided to stop teaching. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw him out that night. Instead, I planned quietly. I called my friend Melissa, a lawyer I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hypothetically," I said, "if a husband commits adultery and lies about an adoption, what can a wife do?" She went silent. Then she said gently, "Emily, this isn't hypothetical, is it?" When I didn't answer, she sighed. "Start collecting evidence. Don't confront him again. Just be smart." That became my mantra. Be smart. I started documenting everything: photos of the papers, screenshots of messages, receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, but he had. I made copies and stored them in a folder at work. At night, I smiled, cooked dinner, tucked in the kids, and said goodnight to the man who had already left me in his heart. Every morning, I reminded myself, don't break yet. Build first. 2 weeks later, the truth exploded, but not the way I'd planned. Vanessa showed up. It was a Saturday. The kids were at my sister's. Michael was fixing the car in the driveway when a silver sedan pulled up. A tall woman stepped out, wearing sunglasses and holding a folder. Her confidence was the kind that only comes from believing you've already won. "Michael," she called. He froze, then dropped the wrench. "Vanessa, what are you—" "I told you you needed my signature on the new papers," she said, walking right past me toward him. Her eyes brushed over me, assessing, cold. "You must be Emily." I nodded slowly. "And you must be the reason my husband can't look me in the eye." Michael stepped between us, panicked. "Stop, both of you. Let's go inside and talk." But I didn't move. "No," I said. "Let's talk right here." Vanessa crossed her arms. "He told me you were separated, that you were just staying together for the kids." I looked at Michael. "Is that what you told her?" He stammered. It's complicated." I smiled bitterly. "No, it's simple. You're a liar." The neighbors were beginning to peek from behind curtains. I didn't care. I was done hiding his shame for him. "Tell her," I said. "Tell her we're still married, that you sleep in my bed, that our kids still call you daddy every night." Vanessa's face paled. "You said—" "I said a lot of things," he muttered. I stepped closer to her, calm but firm. I said, "You can have him, but you'll never have the version of him I believed in." Then I turned to him, "And you will never have me again." I walked inside, packed a suitcase, and by the time he came in to plead, the only thing left of me in that house was my shadow. That night, I took the kids to my sister's and told them only what they needed to know, that Daddy and Mommy needed space, that everything would be okay. Sarah cried. Evan asked if it was his fault. I told him no, that love sometimes changes shape, but never disappears. When they fell asleep, I sat alone on the porch, watching the stars through the blur of my tears. For the first time in years, I felt empty, but also free. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't forgiving someone again. It's forgiving yourself for waiting so long to leave. The next few weeks felt like walking through fog. Everything was familiar. The smell of my coffee, the rhythm of the morning school rush, even the way sunlight slipped through the curtains. Yet somehow, nothing felt the same. I had escaped the cage, but the ghost of my marriage followed me everywhere. Every ring of my phone made my heart race. Every text from an unknown number made me wonder if it was him. Michael didn't stop trying. He called, he emailed, he even showed up at my sister's once, flowers in hand, guilt in his eyes. "I made a mistake," he said, voice trembling. "Please, Em, don't throw away everything we built." I stared at him, really looked at him. The man I'd once loved so fiercely now looked smaller somehow, not in size, but in truth. "Michael," I said quietly, "you didn't just make a mistake. You built a second life while pretending to love me in this one." He shook his head, his voice breaking. "I thought I wanted something new, but I realized I can't live without you, without the kids, without—" I stopped him there. "You did live without us, Michael. You just didn't expect me to notice." He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. That's when his expression changed. The sorrow twisted into anger. "You're really going to throw me away after everything?" That word, throw, stuck to my ribs like glass. He wasn't sorry. He was entitled. "You threw me away first," I whispered, and I shut the door. A month later, the divorce papers were ready. My lawyer, Melissa, sat across from me at her office, her tone calm but firm. "You've got enough evidence to protect yourself financially and legally, but Emily, are you emotionally ready?" I smiled faintly. "Does anyone ever feel ready to end a 20-year marriage?" She sighed. "Fair point. But you're doing the right thing." The hearing date was set for early December. For weeks, I functioned like clockwork. Work, home, kids, repeat. But beneath the surface, something was shifting. I was learning to breathe again. I started journaling every night, small notes about gratitude, pain, and freedom. It became my therapy. One night, I wrote, "Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone stay. It means releasing the version of them that hurt you and freeing yourself from the need to fix them." It felt like a truth I've been waiting years to say out loud. Then, a week before the court date, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Harris?" a woman's voice said. "This is Child Services. We're calling about an adoption inquiry made under your husband's name." My stomach dropped. "I'm aware of it," I said carefully. "Well," she continued, "the application was denied, but there's a note requesting your signature for reconsideration. We just wanted to confirm if you're still his legal spouse." I froze. He was still trying, still pushing forward with Vanessa, even after pretending to beg for my forgiveness. I ended the call, shaking, and stared at the wall for a long time. Then something inside me clicked. No more silence, no more hiding his sins behind closed doors. I called my lawyer and told her everything. I said, "I want this on record. Every lie, every deceit, all of it." The day of the hearing was cold, the kind of cold that seeps through your coats and into your bones. He was already there when I arrived, clean-shaven, wearing the same blue tie he'd worn to our wedding. For a moment, my heart fluttered with an old memory. The way he'd smiled at me that day, his hand trembling as he slipped the ring onto my finger. And then I remembered. That ring meant forever. but he treated it like a placeholder. When the judge asked if I had anything to say before signing the decree, I stood up. My voice was calm. My hands didn't shake. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I just want to say I forgive him." A murmur spread across the room. Even Michael looked stunned, but I continued. "I forgive him, not because he deserves it, but because I do. I don't want his mistakes to live in me anymore. I'm letting them go." The judge nodded softly. Noted. And just like that, with a single signature, 20 years of love, lies, and loyalty ended. That night, I didn't cry. Instead, I lit a candle and sat by the window. The world outside was quiet, almost reverent. My kids were asleep in their rooms, safe, peaceful. For the first time, I wasn't anyone's wife, just me. And that felt beautiful. I took out my journal and wrote my final entry for the year. Sometimes closure isn't an apology or a goodbye. It's standing in your own silence and realizing you survived. I closed the book, took a deep breath, and smiled. Because the truth is, healing doesn't begin when they say sorry. It begins when you stop waiting for it. 6 months after the divorce, I could finally say it without my throat tightening. I'm okay. The words felt strange at first, like trying on a new dress that didn't quite fit yet, but with time, they started to feel real. Life had settled into a quiet rhythm again. The kids were adapting, therapy helped, routine helped more. I'd started a small online business from my dining room table, handcrafting soy candles with simple labels that read things like "still blooming" and "forgive and free." It started as therapy, really. Melting wax, mixing scents, naming feelings I couldn't speak. But then orders came. First from friends, then from strangers. And just like that, Ember Light was born. Funny, isn't it? How something that begins in pain can turn into purpose. But life has a strange way of circling back to test you. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my friend Lydia called. "Emily," she said hesitantly, "I think you should see this." She texted me a link, a local news piece about a disputed adoption case. My eyes skimmed the headline. "Couple under investigation for fraudulent adoption application. Husband accused of concealing marital status." I felt my pulse quicken. And there he was. Michael's face right there beside Vanessa's. The article said they'd tried to adopt again, this time in another state, using falsified documents claiming he was divorced 2 years earlier. Apparently, when the agency discovered the discrepancy, they launched an investigation. They'd both been banned from adopting permanently. That night, I sat on the porch, candle burning beside me. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. He'd lost everything. His family, his name, his reputation, all because he couldn't face the truth of who he was. The next morning, a letter came, his handwriting on the envelope. I almost threw it away, but something told me to read it. Not for him, but for me. Inside was a single page. "M, you were right. I built lies because I didn't believe I deserved peace. I tried to fix the hole in me by starting over, but it only got deeper. I'm sorry. Not for losing you, but for never being the man you thought I was. I hope you find someone who doesn't make you question your worth. Michael. I folded the letter and tucked it between the pages of my journal, not because I forgave him more, but because I didn't want to forget how far I'd come. A year later, Ember Light wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. I'd moved my work from the dining table to a small rented studio downtown. The shelves were lined with jars and labels, hope in glass form. Some days I still caught myself thinking, what would Michael say if he saw this? But then I'd remind myself, his opinion no longer lived here. One afternoon, a man came into the shop. He looked around, quietly studying the candles. He picked one up. Mend and move on. Did you make these? He asked. I did, I said, smiling. They're inspired by real stories. He smiled back. Then you must have lived quite a few. There was kindness in his tone. Not pity, not curiosity, just understanding. We talked a bit. His name was Daniel, a single dad. Kind eyes, patient voice. He bought 3 candles and left. But the next week he came back. And again. It wasn't romance at first. It was companionship. Shared stories of hurt, healing, and second chances. I didn't plan for it to grow, but it did. Slowly, gently, the way new things do when you've learned not to rush them. Sometimes I think about the night I found those adoption papers. How I stood there, holding my broken trust in trembling hands, thinking my world had ended. But now, standing in my studio, surrounded by the soft glow of 100 flickering lights, I realized something. That night didn't break me. It birthed me. When my kids and I celebrated the 1-year anniversary of Ember Light, I made a new candle, a one-time edition. I called it The Promise Kept. The label said, "To every woman who stayed too long trying to fix someone, may you never forget the day you decide to fix yourself instead." We sold out in 2 days. And for the first time in forever, I didn't just feel like a survivor. I felt like a storyteller of my own life. A few weeks later, Daniel came by again, holding a small bag. Inside was a simple wooden plate that read, "She turned her scars into light." I ran my fingers over the words, tears welling up. He said softly, "I thought it belonged here." And he was right. It did. I hung it above my workspace, a quiet reminder that every heartbreak carries a lesson if you're brave enough to listen. That night, I closed my shop late, the candles still glowing behind the glass. I looked at their soft light reflecting off the window and saw myself, not the broken woman who begged for answers, but the one who built something beautiful out of truth. Sometimes, I whispered to the empty street, the best revenge is peace. And for the first time in years, I went home smiling. They say forgiveness is like lighting a candle. Not for the one who hurt you, but so you can finally see your own way out of the dark. For the longest time, I thought forgiving Michael meant letting him back in. But now I understand, forgiveness was never about him. It was about freeing myself from the version of me that kept trying to prove I was enough for someone who couldn't even be honest. When I look at my life now, my kids laughing in the next room, the soft scent of lavender and sandalwood filling my studio, I realize that peace doesn't come with apologies. It comes when you finally stop waiting for one. I used to think my story ended the day my husband betrayed me. But that was only chapter 1. The real story began when I stood up, wiped my tears, and started over on my own terms. Maybe someone out there is listening tonight, sitting in that same quiet heartbreak I once knew, checking his phone, rereading her last message, wondering if she should stay, forgive, or walk away. If that's you, I want you to remember this. Love should never make you lose yourself. The moment it does, it's not love anymore. And sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is choose yourself, even if your voice shakes when you say, I'm done. Because healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, I'm still here. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to walk away to find peace, you're not alone. Would you have forgiven him or walked away too? Tell me in the comments. And if my story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Because here, every story is a light in someone's dark night.